happens if you finally find your freedom in worship and then someone tells you to stop? What do you do when your heart is finally free to move, but your church says no? That's what we're talking about today in today's live stream, right after this. I'm Andrea York with Catch the Fire Worship Flags, and this is the Fan into Flame live stream where we talk about every kind of worship related topic to become the worshipers that God is looking for. Inspired by John 4:23. We're talking about all things worship. So if you're a creative worshiper, don't forget to like and subscribe so that you know when we are going to be posting every week on Friday. So thank you for watching. If you're following us back, or we came back, we actually had some major technical issues last week, and I apologize even if you've been watching the live stream. I think we also, the week before, we had a few technical issues with getting your chat and seeing your chat as it was live. So if you are watching live, I want to say welcome. Thank you for watching live. Please let us know where you're watching from. And this is a really important conversation that we're having. And so I really, really would love if you are even watching this afterward. I know that you probably have testimonies, because what we're talking about is when your church says no to worship flags. You find that something just stirs in your heart. You're introduced to worship flags. And this is the one of the testimonies that we hear most commonly, is what to do when when the church that you attend doesn't allow worship flags. So the question isn't just practical; it's actually quite personal. It touches something really, really deep inside of us, because it's as if we have the freedom to move, but then only to be told no. We feel it's personal. It's really personal. So if you are here and you have a story, do say hi. Hi, Holly. We love that you are here. Thank you so much. So we're just talking about what happens when our church says no. So the question is about discovering worship flags. It feels like coming home, right? If this is new, if you've just kind of discovered worship flags, it really does feel like, oh, there's something that is full body, whole body, responding in worship, adoration to the Lord. We lift up our whole body as a living sacrifice to Him. This is something. From my own experience, I know that it just really unlocked something in me that had been dormant for almost 4 decades. And so I was actually part of a church. This was the start of my testimony. It's the start of so many people's testimony, and even I've gone through churches. We've gone through churches where I could use them and then I couldn't use them. But flag worship is really that something. It's so intimate. It's prophetic. It's beautiful. And then someone says no. And that really, it hurts. It could be your pastor. Sometimes it's a worship leader. Maybe it's the policy that's not not declared, but it's unspoken, and you just feel the stares, or you feel the silence, right? It happens in a moment that you don't expect. You lifted up a flag, and then gently asked not to bring it again. Has that happened to you? Is that part of your testimony? This is a conversation. If you're watching live, please do say hi in the chat. Talk to us. Talk back to me, because we're going to be talking about this. So if you've been shamed or scolded, or even felt like they weren't welcome, really, this is the topic today. And suddenly, what's felt like joyful obedience. God introduce something to your spirit. You were introduced to it. Maybe you saw it on a video. You wanted to try it out, but you took it to the church, and they said no. And so now it feels torn. On one hand, you want to honor leadership, which I wholeheartedly say we want to honor our leadership. We want to be in unity with our church family. But we also know that this is an expression that some of us are called to flag. We're called to worship. And so it wasn't just our idea, because why would I want to put myself in display? I mean, some people might want to do that, but why would I want to have the stares of someone? This is not my idea. It was something that the Lord, the Holy Spirit, awakened in me, probably in you as well. And it's not a performance. Certainly didn't start like that. It's not a performance. It is offering my heart, just naked and vulnerable in front of other people. And then the rejection of that, wow, that cuts super, super deep. Maria, if you are following along with us, please don't forget to look in the chat, because we do want people, we want to get those comments. We apologize for the last time. So, because this is a really important conversation. Today we're talking about what to do in those moments when it cuts deep, what we've been worshiping. So how do we respond in rejection in the house of God? What is our heart posture? How do we keep the flame burning when others are trying to snuff it out? And can we forgive and still move in our calling? Oh my gosh, so important. And whether you're a seasoned flagger or just stepping into that kind of worship, you are not alone. Your worship is seen. That's the most important thing. We're going to talk about that. Your movement matters. There's path forward that honors both God and the people around you. Holly says, "Thank Jesus, my church loves when I flag." That you are so fortunate. You really are just blessed in that, and we bless you. We bless the ministry that you're called to continue on. Yeah. So let's talk about what it is, that worship is not defined by our props, our worship flags, but it is really our posture. Yeah, right. Our live stream is actually called the Fan into Flame, based on 423, John 423. Yet a time is coming and is now come that true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. So what does that look like? So before there was flags, there was the heart. Flag worship is powerful. We know that if you're called to be a flagger, you know that the power, that there's something that is unlocked, probably in your spirit. There's something that is unlocked prophetically, that is spoken, but it's not required to be a worshiper. You can be a worshiper without worship flags. You can be a worshiper without painting. You can be a worshiper even without movement. Sometimes if you are very active and demonstrative in your worship, that might feel like you're being diminished. But our spirits are not diminished. They're not diminished by our bodies, because what if you are confined in your body? What if you have a physical disability that doesn't even allow you? Like, that doesn't mean that's the only way to worship. So we just need to say that, like, that's probably our preferred. If you're a worshiper and you're here, you're listening to the podcast, you're part of our community, you're part of our community of flag worshipers. That is the way that we love to worship, but it is not required that that's the way we have to worship. Right? Flagging is one of the beautiful ways. It's just one of many beautiful ways that we express worship. It's not the essence. The essence is your heart posture. So if we remember that, so even when you've been rejected and it feels like it's personal because we've really emptied ourselves, so don't let that no to flags be a no to worship. Don't take offense, and so that you just put aside the worship. You're still a worshiper, right? John 4:23, that true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, right? And then we have to understand the role of honor. Hebrews 13:17 says, "Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they keep watch over your souls." This is maybe a little harder for us to understand if our leaders don't understand. Sometimes it's a conversation, but honor does not necessarily mean agreement. When I was raising my son, we would talk about honor, and particularly when it came to teachers that he didn't like. And we would talk about giving honor, because not because maybe they were even doing something that he didn't like, but we give honor because we are honorable. So therefore, as someone who is honorable, I can give honor to anyone, because it doesn't depend on that person. It depends on that God has called me to honor others and to be honorable, and so I can do that. So understanding the role of honor as we honor our church leadership, the worship leader, whoever is kind of like giving us the no that they're not permitted, right? It means we recognize the spiritual authority of our leadership as God ordained, even if we don't align with our preferences. And we have to remember it aligns with our preferences. They are called, God has called them to be a leader, and they do actually have to account for our souls. We're going to be talking more, just a little plug for this topic. We're going to be talking more. I'm going to bring in the pastor of my church, and we're going to talk about what that looks like. That's coming in August. It's a few weeks down the road, so watch for that. We're going to continue this conversation because I think it's so important that we're talking about it. Don't you love this, that David honored Saul even after Saul tried to kill him? Like that. If Saul can honor, if David can honor Saul, we can honor our pastors and our worship leaders, even if they don't let us worship, right? It might be mean choosing that we don't bring our flags into a space where they're not permitted, but that doesn't mean you're silenced. It means that worship is taking on a new form. Some of the things too is that they are worse, that they even at, I don't know what you think about Bethel Church. I'm not going to get into any politics around that, but Bethel Church has videos, or their live stream, their services are live streamed, and they actually have some parameters around the live stream, and the ones that are not filmed or recorded and put on live stream, there's a little bit more freedom. So some of the what your pastor is doing is he's pastoring not just your call, but he's pastoring everybody's call, and to get them into a place where they're able to come into the fulfillment of their call. And so some of it, like mindsets, need to shift. So it's not even just what the pastor or the leader is saying, that no, that even if they don't agree, but if it's going to cause a lot of distraction for people, then then maybe taking it a little slower is going to be wisdom in that part. And rejection is part of the worshiper's path. I hate to say this, but that's the truth. David danced before the Lord with all his might, right? And remember the scene, and his wife Michal mocked him. Jesus healed on the Sabbath and was condemned by religious leaders. Mary poured out her perfume on Jesus and was criticized for waste. Rejection is part of a worshiper's path. It's not always an indicator that you're wrong. Sometimes it's just confirmation that worship is challenging something in someone else. So you're not alone. The worshiper's journey has always included moments of being misunderstood, but that doesn't mean you're shut down in your worship. It may mean God is calling you into a hidden season where he becomes your only audience. That was the start of my worship journey. If you're watching and that's been part of your experience, I'd love to hear that. Maybe we can even get you on the podcast. We'd like to share the story, right? And your worship doesn't begin and end at church. And if it does, then we have to go back to remembering the very first point that I made, was that it's a posture of your heart, right? We don't come into church and that's the only place we're worshiping. Worship is that we are worshiping in spirit and in truth, and it is something that we are doing all the time. A worshiper worships, right? So it's something that you are. It's part of your DNA. It's part of your identity. A worshiper worships. Some of the most powerful worship moments happen in living rooms, in bedrooms, in empty fields. And the Bible is full of wilderness worship. One of the most incredible worship times that I have, even by myself, is when I'm cleaning. I hate cleaning, and I think it's just that the Lord allows me to have these moments with him. Like, it is just really something that I loathe. I hate having a dirty house more than I hate cleaning, so I'll still do it. But as I just pop in some worship music, I have these really wonderful encounters, and actually not a flag in sight. And so it's not that it just happens in a church. It happens sometimes also in your wilderness seasons. Those are often where the most intimate encounters happen. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed by himself. So we have to remember this, that God met Moses on a mountain. He's not in a temple. Elijah heard God in a whisper, not in a crowd. And if your church doesn't have space for movement, whether that they actually allow worship flags or would welcome them, sometimes there's just a space limitation. Ask God where He is inviting you to express your worship. Is it in your home? Is it flagging with a group online? I actually found a lot of freedom in worshiping outside. Right now, it's summer where we are, so it's a beautiful time to go outside. Private intercession. God is not limited to our walls, and neither is your worship. So that's a great thing to understand. And then we have to really don't let bitterness take root. It's so easy to take offense. Perhaps this is the greatest danger in everything that we're talking about, that offense and unforgiveness would harden your heart. Let me talk about this with grave warning and responsibility. In a moment, I'd like to share my story. Hebrews 12:15 warns us, see to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up and cause trouble and defile many. Let me read that again. Hebrews 12:15. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up just up to cause trouble and defile many. So this is such a grave warning in terms of taking offense. So if we are to take offense because of what I've talked about, we offer, there's vulnerability when we offer worship, particularly in front of someone else. And if there's a rejection, it feels very personal. It feels like they're personally rejecting us. And the enemy wants at that point to definitely to like, yeah, you should be offended by that. That's and if I share have shared this before, but let me just this is so relates. I remember when I way back when I was starting worship, there was a group of intercessors that I was not part of the intercessory team, and so there had been a decision that only the intercessors would be able to use worship flags on a Sunday morning, which I remember I had not brought my worship flags that day, but I had there was worship flags that I had given to the church, and in fact, I had fixed all of the worship flags that whether I had made them or not, they were tattered and they're falling apart, and I had fixed all of them, and I couldn't see them where they were. I had felt that I really wanted to worship with flags, and so I had gone over to where they usually find them, and then I went to the head intercessor and I said, "Hey, where's the flags? I'd like to flag." And then I was told that only the intercessors are able to use the worship flags. And I waited for a moment, thinking, "Okay, she's going to tell me that I can still worship them." Because at this point, I was actually traveling all over the US. I'd been to several conferences as a speaker, teaching others to worship. I had Catch the Fire worship flags, I think, existed for about 5 years at this point. So I was really well trenched as a flag maker, as an anointed flag maker, someone who had built a community of other worshipers. And I thought to myself, do you not know who I am? And I really felt at that moment that there was a time where I could take like there the enemy was right there, where it talks about where the sin is crouching at your door. It was really right there, and I could take offense, and I had to check myself. Who am I? Am I a worshiper who only worships with flags, or when it suits me, or when there's some sort of an output, or could I just worship in my heart? And so that was really really important, and I think that was a lesson because I felt how close it was, and I had to work through what I wouldn't say that right even in the moment. There was moments where I had to like work through that, and it took about a year before I was actually allowed to use worship flags in that church. But I just continued to honor, and I would just worship outside like I had learned when I first picked up worship flags. So bitterness doesn't just harm you, right? It poisons your perception of leadership. And then we tell other people and we tell other people, and we talk about how we've been wronged and how they don't understand and they don't understand our call. And God has called us to do this. It poisons our community. Either someone doesn't want agrees with you, which I think is worse, or you're kind of like, that person's really negative. I don't want to be like, you're kind of ostracized from the community. I don't actually know which one is worse, whether you poison the community or they decide, no, we don't need this negativity. Either way, it breaks fellowship, it breaks community, this bitterness that we allow to be in our hearts. Right. So when we forgive, then we have a space for joy to return. It's so powerful. And your obedience in private will lead to promotion in time. Joseph was thrown into the pit because of his dreams, right? He was a faithful in prison. Eventually he was promoted to a place of authority that he could never have orchestrated. Some of the things that God is building in you and developing in you in this time of desert, in this time of hiddenness, in this time of being not able to fully express, is to actually get rid of some of the things that will keep us from or corrupt us at the top or when we're promoted. So don't strive to be seen. Let God do the lifting. First Peter 5:6 says, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Right? If you're in a season right now where your worship is hidden, it doesn't mean it's over, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to start. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be in a church where you might be able to use them on a Sunday morning. Right now, it just might mean that you're being refined. So wait for his timing. So let's consider the story of Joseph, because his journey mirrors what creative worshipers face. Right? Joseph was a dreamer. He was super creative. He received visions from God at a young age, powerful pictures of his future and destiny. But instead of celebration, he was met with jealousy, with ridicule, and betrayal. His brothers didn't understand. They stripped him of his robe. They took away his flags, if you will, a symbol of favor, and he threw him in a pit. Can you relate to any of this? This is part of your story. But you found freedom in movement, right? You stepped into your identity as a worshiper. You responded to God with absolute vulnerability, joy, and abandon. And then someone stripped that joy away. Joseph was sold in prison, falsely accused. He spent years in prisons that did not reflect the dream or the call that he carried. But here's the thing: the dream didn't die in the pit, it was planted there. And what others saw as rejection, God used as preparation. What a beautiful picture. In Potiphar's house, Joseph learned stewardship. He learned in prison, he learned compassion. In silence, he learned discernment. What are you learning this season? God was not punishing him. He's shaping Joseph. He's shaping you. If you find this is the place you found yourself, right? You might not be flagging in public right now. You might feel unseen, but your worship is being refined, and God is shaping your character to match the weight of your calling. We never want to get to a place of promotion where our character cannot handle that weight. Eventually, Joseph was promoted, uh, not because he pushed his way to power, but because he stayed faithful in obscurity. Can you stay faithful in obscurity? When he stood in that place of influence, the very people who rejected him came to him for help. Isn't that redemption? Isn't that the way that the Lord does it? Right? Joseph, he could say without any kind of bitterness, what you intended for evil, God intended for good, with all of the compassion of seeing of how he might actually be able to step in. Are we going to be found in that same place? Sometimes the moment you begin to step into the identity, an expression God gave you, the people closest to you don't understand. You're seen as like being too much, too showy, a distraction, a threat to how worship is done in your church. And you're asked to stay quiet, sit down, put the flag away. Joseph didn't lose the dream, even when he lost the coat. Neither will. Right in prison, Potiphar's house, when he was falsely accused, he continued to walk with God. He didn't force himself into a position. He let the Lord develop his character. God will use your obedience, your private obedience, to bring about public fruit. We've talked about this a lot at Catch the Fire worship flags, that before you are a public worshiper, you should be a private worshiper. We should always be a private worshiper. If we're only worshiping on Sunday, there's something about our heart that needs to be that needs to be corrected. So let your worship be planted in secret. Let your movement become intercession, and let your flag movement be unseen but full of fire. It does not, you can still release the fire. The word of the Lord does not return void. If we look at worship flags and our worship as prophetic movement that shifts things, that it does not return void. The word of the Lord does not return void. And so whether it is seen or not, the Lord will accomplish something. So if that rejection is that you've experienced, it isn't the end, it's the beginning of refining, it's the training ground for promotion. And what others cast out, God, God will use to feed nations. Isn't that amazing? That God will use to feed nations. He'll use it for the good. Your worship is not wasted. It's being tested and refined like gold. When God opens the door, it won't be because you fought for that place, which is something. Then if you have to fight for your place, then you have to defend it. It will be because that you were faithful in the secret place. So if you've been stripped of your coat, you've been stripped of the colors, if you've been stripped of your worship flags, where you have at the place where you felt seen and accepted, know that the dream is still alive. Right. Before we end, I just want to pause here because I think that right here, if you're watching to this point, I thank you for staying with us. But here's something that I felt that we would need to do as we are going through this live stream, that I think that we might need to have a time of healing and let it go if you're willing. Some of you might be still carrying and feeling the sting of someone's words or their rejection. Maybe it was the pastor who asked you to not bring flags again. Maybe it was a friend who made you feel foolish for dancing, or a church that said your worship doesn't belong, and it hurt. And it shut something down in you. But what if, like Mary, who ran to Jesus, um, for any kind of offense of where she was, and ran to Jesus and just worshiped him. What if we could let that go at Jesus's feet? Weep over his feet if you must, but let it do in worship. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending that it didn't happen to you, that it doesn't hurt, but it means actually trusting God is righteous, that he's a righteous judge that will be released. He'll release you from the wounding, right? Let me say that again. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen and it doesn't hurt. It just means that we trust the one who is going to release you. So wherever you are at the moment, if you're still watching, or if you're watching this at another time, can we just pray right now? Father, we come before you as a group, but I myself, we come before you. And if there has been offense, if I've taken offense, I've been hurt, I've been shut down, I felt like a rejection on the worship that I so long to give you, and it has shut me down, and I have let it. Lord, I'm asking you today to release me of that wound, that I give it to you. I freely give it to you, and you would fill me with your joy, that I release and I choose to forgive those that have either said or even left it unsaid, but there was something in the way that they responded that I knew that there was a rejection. There was that they thought I was foolish, that I didn't belong, that I was too much. I forgive them for any of those thoughts, Lord. I forgive them for what they've said, and I release them, and I release you to bless them, Lord. Teach me in the quiet, in the wilderness, in the unseen places. Teach me to worship you, have the right posture and a right stance, because that is my heart for you, Lord. Whether there is an audience or not, I worship you. Invite me into the throne room where we can dance before you as a group, Lord, that we would not commiserate in misery, but we would lift one another up. I thank you that there's a community that understands this. But I release it to you, and I receive your grace and your joy. Restore to me, Lord. That thank you. I hope that you prayed that. If you did, let us know if that helped. If what your experience has been, right? And our final thought today is that it's a quiet ache that really a lot of worshipers carry. So it's not something that is uncommon, which is the saddest part of it. But it is an ache that we can bring to the Lord and be close to Him. So here's the truth: your worship is welcome in heaven. We don't need to let it be on earth as it is in heaven, but let us your movement matters. Let us know that the moment of rejection steal the joy of your offering. Don't let that happen. So lift your flag in worship in secret. Dance in your kitchen. Lift your arms in the wilderness. He sees you. He loves your worship and he receives your offering. If this encouraged you, I want to hear from you. I'd actually really love to have you on the live stream and we can talk more about this issue, this topic. Drop a comment, send a message, share with a friend who needs to hear this word, right? And if you're looking for worship flags that might help you stay faithful when you're hidden, I want to suggest faithful promises. Oh, we have beautiful offering. Beautiful offering is such a beautiful. They're out of stock at the moment, but let's talk about beautiful promises or faithful promises. This is the promise of what God has said to you. If you are called to worship and called to flag, let just declare this in like prophetically declare it with the faithful promises worship flags. I think that they really encompass a lot. I also want to let you know I'm really I love this book that we've put together. It's the beginner's guide to worship flags. And if I can just let me see if I can do this because you can't see it. It's a printed book. You get it printed. It's full color, and it actually has topics of like how to worship out and honor worship. Let me see if I can find the table of contents is. So we have like the spiritual significance of color. We talk about color, but integrating worship flags, devotionals for your worship flags, and etiquette of introducing them, using worship flags in corporate gatherings. We talk about how to honor our leadership, and even using worship flags outside. It's $29. It's a beautiful book. This will be, if you purchase on our website, it'll be printed on demand and sent to you. So I just wanted, that's a highlight. This is fairly new to our shop. Quite happy with that. So we want to say thank you for watching us today. If you are joining us next week, I'll be with Pat Dyer of Breakthrough Flags Ministry. She joins, we get together every third Thursday of the month, and we're going to be talking about a new worship challenge. So stay tuned for next week. If you've been part of our worship challenges before, this is something you definitely want to hear about, know, and participate. So join us next Thursday for Pat Dyer of Breakthrough Flags Ministry. Thanks for watching today. Be blessed.